Way to go. Okay, we are live. And we are back. We're going to walk through S236. Ellen Schakowsky, the drafter, is here. And this is our first walkthrough, and then we'll decide what order we're going to take it up and who we'd like to hear from. So Ellen, just tell us what this bill does.
Sure. Ellen Schakowsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. I am here on S236, which is an act relating to amending the criteria of Section 248. So 30 VSA Section 248, you will recall, establishes the procedure that requires a permit for new electric generation facilities and gas facilities. So a lot of the time when we're talking about 248, we are thinking about renewable energy projects or energy projects in general.
About 248A because that's what usually comes through here to TELF,
right,
which is the alternative process
for telecom. Yep, and so this is specific to the energy projects. And so this bill is doing sort of two things. First, and they're both related to appeals.
Appeals, okay.
Yes, and so first, there's new language on page 2 regarding a limitation on appeals related to adjoining landowners. So if an adjoining landowner or other person who claims an interest in any proceeding held under this section as a result of owning or occupying property in proximity to the facility under review, seek permission to intervene as a party in any proceeding, so join the case, their participation is limited to whether the facility will have an undue adverse impact on public health and safety or traffic under subdivision B5. And they must prove they have a particularized interest protected by this section that may be affected by an act or decision of the Public Utility Commission, and that no other party can adequately represent their interest. So currently, the statute does not make any distinction about who can intervene as a party to one of these cases.
So I could live in Montpelier and appeal a decision in Enosburg.
Not right away. You do have to. So currently under 248, there is notice required to be given to the adjoining landowners and the relevant state agencies. And so there is a lesser barrier for those immediate parties nearby. Anyone else will need to request to intervene. It's called a motion to intervene, and they have to demonstrate their interest and what they're actually seeking to do. It is similar to what happens under Act 250, but it is a different standard. And so one of the things that this language is doing is bringing in the phrase particularized interest, which is the Act 250 standard. So it is requiring additional evidence of why an adjoining landowner would be seeking to join the case. And then it's also limiting what they can bring evidence related to. And so it's limiting it to public health and safety and traffic.
Okay, so anybody that has concerns about radio waves or that would count.
Radio waves is a bad example.
I know. All I can think of is 5G, but that's telecom, but something like that.
Yes, so under this section, there is a full list of criteria, which is actually on the next page, and that is where the other change of this bill is.
Okay.
So the list of criteria are on page 3, and these are the things that the Public Utility Commission reviews, and that if parties have an issue with, they can bring evidence about and ask for demonstration for the adverse impact of the applicant. And so currently the list includes aesthetics, historic sites, air and water purity, the natural environment, the use of natural resources, the public health and safety, and the criteria in 1424AD, which is related to, I think it's flood hazard areas. It's okay, or it could be river corridors. It's one of the water. So And then
Can't
also,
put it in a flood colorway.
right, and then also there's other Act 250 criteria 1 through 8 and 9K, as well as primary agricultural soils and greenhouse gas impacts. So there's this long list of criteria that an applicant for one of these projects needs to meet. And so someone seeking to intervene in one of these cases has to identify what criteria they're interested in. And so the language on page 2 is seeking to limit that to public health and safety and traffic if they are an adjoining landowner or someone in close proximity to the project.
Okay, so you're in a butter, we're now saying adjoining, or you live next to the abutter.
Yeah.
And this thing is in full view of your backyard, but the neighbor's yard is between the few of them.
And so seeking to limit what you can give evidence about.
Okay.
And so the other thing that's happening on page 3 is actually it's striking aesthetics from this list. And so it's getting rid of that criteria entirely.
Okay, and that I assume is one of the main, we don't want to look at a solar field from our road. Okay. Well, I'm sure we will have a lot of discussion on this. Committee, any questions? No?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do have questions, but there's enough material, enough new thinking in this that do you have a schedule for when we may revisit this beyond this initial introduction? I feel like I need to do a little homework and
Yes.
back up to speed.
No, this is our first
some of these
meeting.
details.
Next week, we're setting up to go through the bills we did this week, the obesity treatment, what was the other one? But we have a couple bills we did this week we're setting up witnesses for. We also have a new bill here which would expand coverage for Medicaid, the eligibility for Medicaid. The health people don't think we should have that either. This year, I don't know what's changed in the secretary's assigning, because usually we're the last ones to get assigned, but we're going to take a look at that. So these two are the newest ones. I'll probably go through the older ones first.
Okay. So I think I need to do some homework before I can ask quality questions, actually.
And I think this is going to go to your committee at some point. Because I know we've done this before. Mostly the cell siting, but.
There's this pendulum that swings back and forth.
Yes.
Between providing greater and easier public access to proceedings and then concern that too many people might intervene and slow a project down. And
right.
And we've seen it go both ways just in maybe the last 6-8 years.
Okay. So Annette Smith has already emailed me with concerns, so we will have her in. And we'll have the PUC and others that deal in this, and any member of the public that's interested. And we will work our way through it. I think, any questions at this point? This is our first walkthrough. Senator McCormick, is that a new hand or?
No, that's yes, it's a new hand.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually what I wanted to say has been sort of touched on in the last couple of minutes, but I think this certainly has to go to Natural Resources and Energy Committee. It belongs in this committee as well. Of course, we deal with utilities, but it belongs as well in Natural Resources. And I, for one, am skeptical of what does seem to me to be a sort of an ongoing movement to cut the people out of the action. And
Actually,
it's a presumption.
Yeah, the last few years we have worked since cell towers turned up. When it was just electric utilities, it was utility lawyers and they were specialty arguing with other utility lawyers. Once we started putting cell towers in people's backyards, they
Yeah.
wanted more access, and this committee has spent a long time. One year was one of our main products, was to make the PUC, which was set up for lawyers who knew the rules, more friendly, and we've really worked to make it more friendly for the public. So I guess, and this is only renewable energy projects. So, I will leave it to Natural Resources to discuss if, renewable energy projects are valuable enough to want to move them along quickly and not have them get bogged down in years perhaps of appeals.
Well, again, just with the vocabulary.
Yeah.
A thing can be valuable and good, and you still maybe don't want to rush it. What you would say, move along quickly, someone else would say, rush it, and you're both are talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So I do think we want to make sure that the other thing is I don't want to presume that the objections that Vermonters may or may not raise are by definition trivial and an intrusion.
I don't think anyone presumes that.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Well, and then also sort of in the background, the PUC just came through and LCAR just approved new net metering rules. So
Okay.
the context that this question gets raised in is also the landscape shifted a little since maybe when the bill was first being considered,
Okay.
only 2 months or 3 months ago.
Well,
Well, and actually,
okay.
you will also recall that they did amend the party intervention rule
Yes.
with LCAR. So
Yeah.
they did also, so I will also, so there's a couple things I do want to say if you're considering taking this up. One of the things that's happening in this first part about the adjoining landowners is currently the statute doesn't make any distinction between adjoining landowners and other parties who want to intervene. And this is creating a bit of a barrier and a specificity for adjoining landowners only, and those occupying property in proximity to the facility, which is not defined.
Is proximity.
So this means someone farther away actually could intervene on more issues potentially than the adjoining landowner. So that's one thing.
Okay.
And then it's also bringing in an Act 250 standard just for these plaintiffs, which you may want to consider. You may want to consider if that's a standard you want to use. And if it is do you only want to use it for these parties?
Okay.
And then just finally, if you're interested in removing aesthetics from the list, you may also need to add a little bit more clarifying language because Act 250 Criterion 8 is also on aesthetics. And
Okay,
so you may need to do some more clarifying language if you're interested in this concept.
If we're interested in making things easier for the general public to work with the PUC, referencing another statute somewhere else, if we're going to use Act 250 criteria, I think we put it in this bill rather than reference it. That just makes it easier for the average person to find it. We have one other thing that we fixed last year, and the complaint was, well, they said we had to go here to find this, and
Right.
then, and
Yes.
you can't do it. So, but it,
Wasn't that judicial rules there was a site to judicial rules.
Yes.
So you had to go look at judicial rules, and most citizens don't consult
Have
the
access
judicial
to it.
rules.
Yeah.
So then we put the procedure into the
right.
language, right?
And I think that would allow us, and it would also allow us to look at the Act 250 language and say, is that exactly what we want to do? But I would encourage Natural Resources. The lead sponsor is one of your own, and because I don't know where this is going to get referred. So you've got half of you on this committee, so you've got a good voice here. And just talk about it in your frame of reference. We'll talk about it. And we'll have the sponsors in to tell us what they are trying to achieve or what problem they're trying to solve.
Right.
And, in some ways, renewable energy also includes windmills. And I think, 2,000 solar panels is a different thing. Windmills in your backyard is a different thing. So I think we're going to talk about this for a while.
If I may, can I ask council a question, please?
Sure.
Ms. Schakowsky, did I hear you say that it almost sounds like an unintentional effect, that if abutters were more constrained in the criteria under which they could appeal or challenge a permit than people who were not abutters or not proximal, that wouldn't seem, it sounds like a possible unintended consequence as opposed to an intentional design, but I'm reading between the lines a little. Were you
That's what I was saying, yes.
hinting at that?
Yeah, it's an unintended consequence.
Okay, thank you.
So that'll be an easy thing to fix compared to some of the other things. But we will go through this, probably not next week, but the week after. We'll see how much progress we make on obesity and what is the other one we're doing next week? And see if we can get that out.
181, the utility poles.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's the one we're doing next week. We're having some trouble lining people up. The public access TV fund that's being set up with a $15 fee for every utility attachment. I'm concerned about how much money that might be, because there's lots of poles and lots of attachments. And I'd also like to get a handle on exactly what PEGs are doing now. Because I think if we put a heavy fee on the cable carriers, they're gonna raise their rates. And we've already got a problem with people affording access. So a couple of things for us to think about when we're looking at that. And we have tried for several years to find a funding source for it's the local TV stations. So think about that. Okay, I think that's it. It's not snowing. First time this week it's not snowing. So we'll see everybody Tuesday.
Just don't let Senator Brock start packing his bag, because then it will start snowing.
No, that's when he starts looking at his bag and out the windows when it starts snowing. Because he's got a long drive. But I do try and get you out of here early on Friday just for that reason. We've had several people from Bennington in this committee, and it's a long drive home in the snow. So thank you, everyone. We're off to a good start. Faith has left us, so we are on our own, which for better or for worse may solve some of the double duty on the agenda, but we're getting there. As I said, I'm going to try and clean out. I try and get every bill up there and get as many as we can out. Always with the property tax looming over our heads. But until the school budgets come in, we aren't going to have any hard numbers on that. But to get it down to the normal below 10%, $200 million maybe, that's a lot of cuts or a lot of money we've got to find. So deep breath and we'll keep trying. Okay, thank you. We can go off live. That's the end